Meantime, Mitch McConnell says, no vacation for you. You'll actually have to do a full day's work in August if you're in the U.S. Senate. No vacation for at least another week. Joining us now to figure this all out and the shenanigans going on in the communications department of the West Wing in the White House, Kelly Sadler out. And basically, the West Wing right now in the communications department, it would be the same if Jeb Bush was president or Scott Walker, Chris Christie, Marco Rubio. Just pick any of them. And you pick any of them, it'll all be the same, right? There's no difference. RNC complete takeover of the communications department in the West Wing for the president. Joining us now to figure all this out, political director, political editor, senior political editor for Breitbart news agency, Matt Boyle. Matt, good to have you.
Hey, John, what's going on, brother?
Hey, man, it's good to have you. You're doing a fabulous job. Breitbart, must read. Got to go on it every day. Got to find the truth right there. Now, let's start with McConnell. He cancels vacation. What's up with that?
Yeah, this is, I think, a huge deal for the conservative movement, grassroots, and Trump supporters. I think that they've been fighting for this for a while. There's been an effort by led in part by Senator Perdue and a bunch of different grassroots organizations to call on to make Congress work again, is what they said, right? So they've been doing this whole thing. And so we see all these nominees that are getting held up by the Senate. There are tons and tons of Trump appointees that are not getting held up. There's a historic obstruction by the U.S. Senate Democrats. In addition to that, we're not seeing the Senate really take up major pieces of legislation that have passed the House. I think there's something like 300-something pieces of legislation that have passed the House of Representatives that the Senate hasn't even touched. The Senate hasn't even been doing any work. So this is a huge step in the right direction after a significant amount of pressure from the Republican conference and from his own members and from conservatives in the movement and Trump supporters across the country. Mitch McConnell had to bend down and agree to cancel the August recess, which is one of the things that we've been pushing for because of the fact that why should they get to go on vacation if they're not doing their job anyway? So doesn't make any sense.
Like, they don't do their job. Look, we've got so many judges that not have been confirmed. We've got ambassadors all over the place that haven't been confirmed. That's just for starters. Go in there, do your job. Do you think they'll ever get rid of, Matt, do you think they'll ever get rid of the 60-vote cloture rule?
I think they have to eventually. I don't think McConnell wants to do it, but eventually they're going to have to. Look, here's the deal. With all of these ambassadorships and appointees and whatnot that are being held up, I was talking to a senior official in the State Department yesterday about this because there's a ton of ambassadorships, right? And then there's also a number of key State Department officials. So Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, doesn't have somebody that he can go to do a certain job in the State Department down in Foggy Bottom. And the effect is that what you have is these Obama holdovers and career officials who happen to be leftists who are doing whatever the hell they want, right? These people are going out there and doing all sorts of different leftist priorities. So there's one person that's out there pushing climate change reports. There's another one that's doing all sorts of different things on gender reassignment stuff. There's all sorts of things that are happening that are designed to push open borders and to undermine. I don't know if you saw this. This UN agency yesterday was out there criticizing President Trump for splitting up families at the border, right? It's nuts. This whole thing is insane, and the fact that there aren't Trump supporters and political appointees in these positions at this stage of the game is due to the historic obstruction by the Senate Democrats, and it's up to Republicans in the majority in the Senate to break that, and I hope that they do.
Well, I hope they do too. Matt, I want to get to this immigration bill that's making its way now through the House. 25 Republicans, if they sign for an amnesty bill and do this Queen of the Hill thing on the House floor, we don't have a good bill. We don't have any of the reforms that the president ran on in immigration. We don't have getting rid of chain migration. We don't have getting rid of the visa lottery. We don't have getting an immigration system that is based on economic and job skill need like Australia has or Canada has. Basically, you've got 25 Republicans are going to align with every Democrat in the House and get an amnesty bill to the floor. They only need 25. They're only 3 short. They've got 22 now. What the hell is going on with this?
Yeah, the whole thing is insane. It first off, it demonstrates that there is President Trump regularly talks about how he has to face historic opposition from both sides, right? Not just the Democrats, but also the globalist Republicans. And there is certainly a globalist wing of the Republican Party that's doing everything it can to try to push an agenda that is not in line with the president's when it comes to things like immigration and trade and all sorts of different other issues. But the big one is immigration. And so these people are now in this effort to try to work with the Democrats to force the House leadership to put a bill on the floor. The discharge petition process is one that is hostile to the current leadership position. It's basically saying that they don't trust the leadership to do the right thing, and that's another problem. I think that you've got issues with Paul Ryan, who's the Speaker of the House, where he does have trust issues, especially on the issue of immigration. People know that Paul Ryan is somebody who dreams of open borders. He's somebody who wants to do an amnesty, and he's leaving at the end of the year. He's a lame duck speaker, and this also shows that there's a lack of respect for the Speaker's office right now because Paul Ryan is a lame duck speaker and announced that he's not coming back. So the fact of the matter is that it really has to be up to, I think, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy to step up and hold these people accountable and stop this thing. There's certain things that the leadership in the Congress can do to even block a discharge petition, even if they do get to those 25 Republicans and all the Democrats signing on to that thing. But they haven't started doing them yet. And so that's the question is, so will they do certain things with the calendar and so on and so forth? Ultimately, the other thing that's really important is I think that President Trump has to come out and say that he will veto this if any piece of legislation that does not meet his requirements, and the only bill that does meet his requirements is the Goodlatte bill. The Goodlatte immigration bill is the only bill that meets the president's requirements as laid out multiple times over the course of this year and last year. So if anything other than the Goodlatte bill comes to the White House, the president should veto it. And I think that the White House shouldn't be afraid to make such a veto threat. So we haven't seen that yet, but hopefully the president will step up and do that if this does get any closer to moving. And the other question is will the Senate pass whatever the House passes on this, if the House does pass something, or is this all a charade? I don't know. So we'll see what happens as this process develops. We've been following it very closely here at Breitbart.
Well, I want you to keep following it, and we got to put a lot of pressure on these people because it's almost unconscionable that 25 Republicans would combine with every Democrat in the House and actually back an amnesty bill for DACA that is counter to what this president campaigned on for 19 months since he got in the race, or 22 months actually, campaigned on it, got elected on it. Now he's talking about it. He's got a very comprehensive legislative package for a permanent immigration reform that makes sense. It's all been abandoned by the House, and now we're just going to get amnesty. It's like, what was the point of the election is my question.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, you still have a president in there who absolutely believes the things that he campaigned on when it comes to immigration. I know that for a fact because I've talked to him about it at length, not in the last few months, but over the course of the campaign, since he's been in the Oval Office. I know he's committed to that. But the fact of the matter is that there is look at who are the 17 Republicans that he beat in the primary, right? It's Marco Rubio, it's Jeb Bush. Marco Rubio was part of the Gang of Eight bill, right? Like, he was part of this whole secretive effort to try to jam an amnesty through the U.S. Congress after Mitt Romney lost in 2012. Jeb Bush is a pro-amnesty guy. John Kasich, another pro-amnesty guy. So while President Trump won the battle in 2016, he hasn't won the war yet. There's still a contingent of those people that are loyal to the vision that Marco Rubio or John McCain or Jeb Bush had for the Republican Party. And and this is why these primaries that are happening across the country are so important, because every time there's another globalist Republican that goes down, and another Trump-supporting grassroots conservative who wins these primary elections, that's another step in the right direction for the Republican Party and away from these establishment people. So, but that's a long process as the party becomes the party of Trump. But there are still definitely people inside the Republican Party who are trying to push open borders, 100%.
Well, it's been happening for a very long time, and you can see by these 25, they have no interest in immigration reform. They have no interest in E-Verify, closing the border wall, getting rid of chain migration, getting rid of the visa lottery program. They have no interest in any of it. They just basically want amnesty, and they think that, somehow that's going to give them political gain. Plus, Matt Boyle, you've got this whole issue with the Wall Street gangster, bankster, Goldman Sachs donor base that, they want cheap labor. And the way they get cheap labor is chain migration, open borders, illegals coming over, drives down wages, and then they donate back to the Republicans that favor their policies. I mean, the whole thing is Trump exposed the scam in this campaign. And now, we've...
and by the way, he's also doing it as president, right? So in the case of the cheap labor thing, this is the most important thing, right? Because it's simple supply and demand, right? If you increase the labor supply, which is you add millions more people into the pool of people that can get jobs, you decrease the demand, which means wages go down. So what is President Trump? Look, we look at all these economic indicators that come out, right? There's 3.8% unemployment. It's, record low African-American, Hispanic unemployment, 60-year lows for women unemployment. The biggest number in all of these different economic indicators is the wages are on the increase, right? And that's because President Trump's policies are not designed to help these coastal elites. They're not designed to help the Wall Street bankers. They're designed to help the American worker. And that's what he campaigned on. He campaigned on the forgotten man. And if he continues to do that, that's why these globalist companies and donor class people are so desperate. These Republican donors to try to get an amnesty, and there's other things that they do to try to drive wages down. But the fact of the matter is they're trying to get this amnesty because they're having to raise wages to pay workers more because of President Trump's economic successes. And they don't want to do that. But Trump is still, whose corner he's in. He's in the American workers' corner.
Spot on. That's all I can say. Yeah. I mean, they want open borders because now they see wages rising and they don't like it. Matt, going forward very quickly, how do you see the White House communications staff shaking out? I mean, it seems like it's basically they just took everybody from the RNC and put them in there.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of different people in that office and throughout the White House, really, but especially in the communications office, that are not working for the president and his agenda, and they're not doing what they can to help the American worker and the American working class people. But what they should be doing all day is going out there and fighting for as hard as they can. And nobody's perfect, but the fact of the matter is that nobody in there is fighting for the president, right? What they should be doing is going out there on a regular basis and fighting to push the president's message to the media as best as they can. I understand it that the media class is against the president by and large for the most part, but I guarantee you there's not one person in that staff right now that is doing everything they can for the president and his agenda all day, every day. And that is problematic. I hope that there are changes that are made at the highest levels of the White House communications and press staff because of the fact that the president deserves better. He's the president of the United States. He deserves people that are going to fight for him on his team. He deserves people who aren't going to spend all day trying to accuse each other of leaking and leaking on each other for real and so on and so forth. The drama is just it serves to only help the president's enemies. We talked about them over the course of the beginning of this show, right? Like you talked about the globalist Republicans pushing amnesty, and you talked about the Democrats obstructing his agenda in Congress. Well, what is this whole attitude where the people are engaging in this type of childish behavior do? It serves to help those people, right? And it serves to help the globalist donor class people that are doing everything they can to undermine the vision that he campaigned on. Now, look, President Trump is succeeding anyway as a result of, despite all of this, but hopefully he can get people that are going to be there willing to serve at his side in the future. I hope that happens in the future here. I hope that there are changes that are made, and I hope that there's significant changes at the highest levels. And like I said, there's really not anyone right now at the highest levels of the press office and the White House that are doing everything they can to help the president and fight for this agenda, which is working. And so hopefully that those, there are changes that happen.
Matt, just a yes or no answer. Do you think there's people in there that are actually undermining the president? Yes or no?
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I think. I'm out of time. I want to thank Matt Boyle for being with us, senior political editor, Breitbart News Agency. Go to Breitbart.com. Download their app. Thanks, Matt.